Check, check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go! Oh, gee, I got to turn my lights on. Hold on, folks. Boy, I'm out to lunch. Give me a second here. So what happens when you work a long day on the car lot? Go visit your mom at the home and then scarf down some supper. So here we go. Ballsy Uncut on this Friday. And free agency doesn't officially kick off until Tuesday, but mostly everything's done. So I guess that could be good. That could be bad. The team that's been the busiest, the Edmonton Elks. Maybe they knew that the salary cap is going to go up $400,000 and nobody else did, or they had better planning with Ed Hervey back in as GM of the Edmonton Elkamos. Anyway, we're going to hear from Morley Scott, the play-by-play commentator of the Edmonton Elks, and get to some other sporting news before it's all said and done. Want to say thank you to our sponsors, Ward Tirecraft, 101 Dudney Avenue in Regina. On 8th Avenue, it is District Brewing. They got their Super Squeeze Seltzers, Mango Lime, Passion Fruit Lime that they debuted back in June. Helped me put up my billboard when I first launched the Our Balls Are Bigger post-game show. We'll have those T-shirts ready to go next Tuesday, sponsored by Hammer Time Roofing in Saskatoon and my buddy Kevin Welsh. Also, want to give a shout-out to Paul Waldo at Royal LePage in Regina, getting the real estate game with the three-time Grey Cup champ, 306-502-5355. Let's have a sponsor break and get to Morley Scott. All right, the play-by-play voice of the Edmonton Elks on 880, Chad. You got that nailed down yet?
Haven't messed up once, Ballsy. I've been
awesome.
Pretty proud of myself.
So did you write it on a paper in front of you before, like for the first little bit?
Yeah, I did, and in a lot of my scripts, I had to backspace a couple of times, and then take the 630 out and put the 880 in. But I had a lot of experience with that when the football team changed their name too. So
yeah.
I'm kind of used to changes like that.
Did you and Dave Campbell put like $5 in a jar every time you called them the Eskimos?
Yeah, we were gonna do that, and then donate it to our charity here at Ched Santa's Anonymous. But we didn't mess up very much. I think I said it twice in the first season, and that was it. So
nobody could blame you, man. I see the Expos hat over your shoulder there. Favorite Expo of all time is
Gary Carter. I got an autographed Gary Carter bat just sitting over here on my desk. And
okay.
A frame picture from, I think it's 1981, the cover of the Sporting News up here, and it's got a drawing of Gary Carter. It says Gary Carter, #1 catcher in Major League Baseball. So yeah, he was my favorite all-time baseball player.
So 94 was the best of times and the worst of times.
Absolutely. I don't think I watched, except for maybe the World Series, I don't think I've watched a baseball game from start to finish since '94. So
really, that's the truth.
Yeah. That was hard for Expo fans. I mean, they're the best team in baseball, and then they gave up the season so that they could fix the problem. They didn't fix the problem though. No. They just went back to the same old. They gave up the year and they gave up the World Series and they just went back to the same old system. So yeah, it was a good year. It was a bad year though too.
We're sitting here in 2025 and they haven't changed anything because the Dodgers have bought everybody. Like if the Dodgers don't win, it's a joke.
Yeah, for sure. It's everybody's Dodgers or Yankees, right? Mets in there once in a while too. It's still the big market teams get all the players.
Okay, so let's talk about the I joke and call them the Elkamos. Let's talk about the Edmonton Elks. And, Did Ed Hervey know the salary cap was going up and got the jump on everybody?
You know what? I believe that everybody involved knew. I mean, they put the release out Wednesday morning, right? Early Wednesday morning, too. So I don't think that on Monday and Tuesday they decided the salary cap was going up and that they just told the GMs. They had league meetings a couple of weeks before that. I'm pretty sure that the general managers and all the players went into the communication legal tampering week knowing what the salary cap was going to be. I find it hard to believe that they would spring that on GMs and players in the middle of the communication week. So I don't believe it has any effect on if guys will renege or if teams will up their offers now because they have more money. I think they knew going in that it was going to be that high.
So Morley, good or bad? Like we're supposed to really have free agency kickoff on Tuesday, but looks like everything's done. Is that good or bad?
It draws it out. It gets. I think it gets the CFL in the news a little bit more instead of just all on one day. We get this whole week with the big names, and then everything becomes official, and they get the hit again on Tuesday, and then it's the second tier guys on the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of next week. So yeah, I think it's fine. It gives you 2 weeks of good publicity for the Canadian Football League in the offseason, which is something they desperately have to figure out how to get more time, on the TV, on the radio, on the podcasts, in the newspapers during the offseason. And I think this does it. So, yeah, I got no issues with it. They got the legal tampering window now, and that's great. The illegal tampering window just moved to a week ahead of time now. That's all.
Yeah. So, Cody Fajardo's there. What do you make of that situation? Cody instead of McLeod with Trey Ford.
Well, it's a different situation for Cody than it was for McLeod. McLeod came in making big dollars and as the starter. Right? Cody, takes a pay cut. He knows he's the backup. He knows he's got a different role. And I had a really good chat with him a couple of weeks ago, and he knows what the situation is. He knows the score, and he's coming to town to do whatever he can to help this team win, to do whatever he can to help Trey Ford be a better quarterback. And as he said to me, he goes, it doesn't mean I'm not going to try, though. I'm still going to play my best. I'm still going to work hard. I'm still going to, come to training camp and do the best I can. And maybe there's a spot for him at some point to play a little bit. We don't know. It depends on how Trey Ford plays and how his health is. So, I think it's a good move. And it's a little more clear-cut this year than it was last year with McLeod and Trey Ford going into training camp, especially after what happened the year before where Ford kind of took over the starter's job at the end of the year and everyone assumed for all of November and most of December that he was the guy, and then all of a sudden Chris Jones signed McLeod Bethel Thompson, and that changed everything.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Protein's back. Jake Serezna. I met him in the Brickhouse Gym in Regina when he was an injured member of the Argos before a game here. Good guy. I like Curly Gittins Jr. That was, I didn't think it was bad to get him in Edmonton, but to lose Serezna wasn't great. It's nice to see him back in Edmonton colors.
Yeah, sure is. The Elks certainly won the trade now, that's for sure. Right?
That's right.
But yeah, the Serezna, it's a great move. You throw in the fact that he's coming back along with the defensive line coach Demetrius Maxey, who's, everybody loves Coach Mac, D-Max. And so he's coming back. He's bringing two of his teammates with him from the Toronto defensive line, and he knows Edmonton. He's spent 5 years here or so he knows Edmonton. It's going to be a great fit. He led the league, tied for the league lead in sacks in Toronto last year before, tied for the league lead in sacks when he played for Edmonton. It's 30 sacks in the last 3 seasons. So, thing I love about Jake Serezna is he can play anywhere. He can go outside, he can go inside, wherever you need him, he can play. So, I think that there's something there. For the Elks defense and their defensive coordinator J.C. Sherritt to work with him, because he can do all sorts of things on that D-line, and he's maybe he's Elmondo Sewell strong. That's how strong he is. So
yeah, it's crazy. I can't even keep up in my mind here, and I usually have a Rolodex. You might be better than me. Like you got Brinkman, you got Robbie Smith, you got Royce Mechie, Kobe Williams. I mean, there's Cody Gray signs today. I mean, wow. Like, this team is totally made over.
Yeah, you forgot Tyrell Ford and
Yes.
David Beard as well, and
Yeah.
Manny Ragamba. Totally, especially the defensive line and the defensive backfield. Looking, they signed Serezna, Smith, and Brinkman, as you mentioned. They also signed a guy by the name of Ali Fayyad, who played in Winnipeg last year. He only played 3 games, started 2, but then was released, I think, in July last year. They signed him as well. Ford, Metier, Williams, and Ragamba, all in the defensive backfield. So the Elks defense is going to look very different last year, and maybe it should. I mean, they gave up the second most points, I think it was, second or third most points, gave up the most yards in the air, they gave up the most passing touchdowns. So, that they needed a bit of an overhaul.
So, and speaking of overhaul, you mentioned J.C. Sheridy's on the coaching staff, but it's headed up by Mark Killam, former Alberta Golden Bear, and you got Chris Morris, too, with that tie-in. How's the city receiving that change and just the changes in general?
Very well. I mean, everybody's pretty excited. Chris Morris was a guy that his name was not mentioned for president. It came out of the blue that Chris Morris was named the Elks president, and everybody liked the idea because he's obviously been on the team before. He's been in the city for forever. Coached the Golden Bears for a long time, and then bringing Ed Hervey back after that was a change that everybody liked because no one liked when he left. So they were happy with the fact that he's back. And Mark Killam, I think he's just a guy that everybody likes. He's a guy you always see him because he's got the hair, right? And when you're watching a Calgary game, you always see him. You always notice him on the sidelines. And I love his enthusiasm running up and down the sidelines when there's a big return on a play. How he's running down the sidelines with the guy. He's got great enthusiasm. He is a young, great football mind, and I think players are really excited to play for him. The city's really excited to have him too. First Edmonton-born coach of the Double E, only their third Canadian-born coach. So it's a big move. He's certainly earned it. 20 years as an assistant coach. He knows this league inside and out, I think, and I'm looking forward to see how he does this year.
You know what I'm liking about the whole thing is more Canadians coaching, like head coaching. When you look at it, Killam, O'Shea, Mace. We're starting, and GMs and front office guys like Chris Morris.
Yeah, for sure. I like it. I know. Mark got a call from Mike O'Shea saying nice to see another Canadian head coach in the league. So they have a fraternity. It's great to see. And it's just a matter of time. There's been some great Canadian players in this league, and it's only it's just common sense that they take that next step to become coaches, assistant coaches, and then into the head coaching job.
For the players, I should have asked this maybe the first question. Is there one move over another that you, as the voice of the team, you were like, okay, that's a great move, or that maybe shocked you?
I don't think so. What has shocked me more than anything in this kind of remake that the Elks have done is the sheer volume of players they brought in this week and came to agreements to. And then we assume it's all going to carry through and be signed on Tuesday when free agency opens. But, the sheer volume of players they've signed is just incredible. And that's been, I think, the biggest thing. Ed Hervey, he made a big splash when he went to BC, too, in 2019. Did kind of the same thing, not to this extent, but he did kind of the same thing. That's what surprised me more than anything else. Everything else, I think, Chris Morris was a bit of a surprise. His name wasn't out there, but the GM's job didn't surprise anyone really that it was Ed Hervey. And then when it came down to coaching, it sounded like it was either going to be Mark Killam or Rick Campbell, and they went with Mark Killam, and everybody's happy about that.
And that's what I was going to ask you, because I had predicted Rick Campbell. I thought this team needs to win right away. Maybe they'll go with the proven head coach with the Campbell name and everything like that. Were you surprised? Shock's too heavy of a word. Were you surprised they went with Killam as opposed to Campbell?
I was at first, but then when I got to find out more information about the situation, I just think Mark Killam is the guy. Like he is, he was going to get a job somewhere. He should get a job somewhere this year. And the biggest thing about that really stood out for me about Mark Killam, and I think this hit Ed Hervey. Ed Hervey talked about it too. He said just the amount of support he got from his current players in Calgary and players in past years that went on social media and did things that said, Mark Killam's got to be hired as a head coach. Wherever he interviews, he's got to be hired because he's too good of a man not to have this job. So I think that really hit home with Ed Hervey. I know it hit home with Killam. He got kind of emotional talking about it at his introductory news conference. So it was a big deal, I think, that the players, from other teams basically stood up and say, yeah, this guy's a head coach. Somebody's got to hire him.
Is Ed Hervey different now than when he was around the first time running the ship? I know from a media standpoint, he likes to keep things pretty guarded. He doesn't like to really, tip his hand. I wouldn't say he's warm and fuzzy with the media. Is he different that way? Is he different in his demeanor?
I think so. I've noticed that already. Even like just this week, I went into the office on Monday. I sat down with him for about a half an hour, and we talked. He talked openly about some things that in the past he wouldn't have talked about. I don't think with the media, especially his first time around in Edmonton when he was the GM for the first time, and you're learning, right? You don't know how you want to handle things. He closed the dressing room to the media the first time. That's not going to be happening this time around, although there's much more media covering the team back then. But it's a situation where he's very different. I think he's learned. He's had 2 other jobs since then as general manager in BC and then in Hamilton, and I think he's. I don't want to say he's been humbled by the experience. That's just me saying that. But he got fired in Edmonton. There was some smoke around his decision to leave in BC, and then he was out of the game for a year or 2, and then he got back in with Hamilton and worked his way back up. I mean, he got a job as a scout with Hamilton. Then he worked his way up to co-GM. Then he became GM and was running that franchise football wise. So I think he's very different. I've noticed that. And so far this year, since he's been hired, I've really enjoyed the time I've got to spend with him and talk with him about his plans and about the Edmonton Elks. He really cares for the team. I mean, he's got a house here, right? He never moved. He never moved since he was a player. He's never moved. He still, even when he was working in BC and Hamilton, he came back here in the off season and lived.
And that seems to be the strategy under Chris Morris. He even said it in his press conference. The revolving door's done. We're not doing that, and we're going to be basically they're loyal to their roots now. It's really kind of a Northern Alberta and Edmonton franchise. Morris, Killam, you mentioned Hervey, an American, but Edmonton's his home now. Yeah, they've kind of gone that way.
And I talked to Ed this week about when they announced Niles Morgan being signed, and that was part of the reason they didn't want Niles Morgan to get away. I mean, first off, he's a great football player. He averages 100 tackles a year over the last couple of years, led the league in defensive tackles, tied with Nick Anderson of the Elks this year. But he's an Edmontonian now. He's set up a business here. He's got a training business here, and he stays here all around. And I think they want to keep guys like that. And as Ed told me, he said, I don't want Edmonton to just be a stop on the career path of these players. I want them to be here, to commit here, and to really fall in love with the city, and they've done that. And I mean, there's been in the old days, guys like Danny Bass and Brian Kelly, they all stayed here all off season. They worked here, whatever it was, and we're starting to see that a little bit again. I know even Aaron Grimes, when he came back to play the second time around, he bought a house, moved his family here, and has been an Edmontonian with his family for the last 3 years now. Now that kind of, I think, paid off for him because he's on the coaching staff now and working as well in the front office, in fan development. So, yeah, I think it's a big deal.
So, Morley, I'll let you go with a couple more questions, and that'll be it. See, it used to be, and we've talked about this before, City of Champions, it was the Oilers and it was the Eskimos, and they were 1A and 1B depending. And it was Eskimos more than the Oilers for a time, and then it was the Oilers. It's the Oilers substantially now. So, if Boris Beattie, I don't want to pick on one guy, but if he doesn't really maybe cost you 3 games with missed field goals, you're in the playoffs and maybe even in second place. So I didn't think this team was that far away, yet all the changes, but I would say this is a very critical season for this Edmonton football team. Like in terms
sure
of
is. Boris Beattie didn't have a great year, but I won't pin him with losses. There was a lot more wrong in games than Boris Beattie, that's for sure. Yeah, you're right. I mean, winning is going to cure a lot of things with this team as far as, attendance, media coverage. I mean, they don't get a lot of media coverage now. I mean, newspapers don't even show up for practices and games now. TV comes maybe once a week. Me and Dave are the only guys who are there every day. So once they start to win and fans start to come back, I think the media coverage will improve and it'll maybe get back to where it was a few years ago when the football team was a big deal in this city. Right now, it's not a big deal, or it hasn't been a big deal, but they're fighting hard. They're making changes and they're doing things. They're getting out in the community. They're selling tickets and they're making changes and they're doing what the fans want to see. They're trying to rebuild the bridge, because there's been a definite, over the last since COVID, basically, there's been a definite disconnect between the fan base and the franchise and the team, and they're working hard to correct it, and I think they're getting there.
Yeah, so and I agree with you. I don't want to just it's a team sport, so I don't want to pin it on one guy. Thanks for correcting
Just
me.
like everybody wanted to blame McLeod Bethel Thompson at the start
Yeah.
of the year too,
Yeah.
and they went 0 and whatever, 0 and 7.
I guess what I
with
meant
him,
more I
and,
guess what I
and
meant
he was quarterbacking was far from the problem at the start
Yeah,
of the year,
yeah,
right? So
yeah. I guess what I meant was if that's the fine
Yep.
line. If Beatty makes those kicks, you guys have 3 more wins. You got 10 wins. You're a home.
Yep.
You're a home playoff team, right?
Yeah, for sure. But and then there's other things. If they punch it in from first and goal from the 1, to win a game. There's that. There's somebody dropped. I think it was Dylan Mitchell dropped a touchdown pass in week 2. They blew a lead against Montreal early in the season. They invented ways to lose last year. I mean, they had 3 walk-offs, right? 3 field goal walk-offs in a row, right? They had, I'm trying to remember the numbers now, 11 losses. I think 8 of them were by 6 points or less.
We're close,
and 6
yeah.
of them were by 3 points or less. So, yeah, it's a fine line. It's a fine line. And that's what Mark Killam said. He said, I watched all the games. This is after he got the job, rewatched all the games. He says, this is a good team that has good players. And it's really not indicative. Their record really wasn't indicative of the talent they have and the way they played.
Okay, and the Super Bowl's coming up. I'm all chiefed out. I don't know if you're all chiefed out or if you like the Chiefs. I hope the Eagles will win, but I can't see Kansas City losing.
I like the Chiefs. I enjoyed the Chiefs, but I'm tired of the Chiefs, right? I'm tired of the whole thing. And Patrick Mahomes is a great player, and Andy Reid's a great coach, and Kansas City's been a great team for 5 or 6 years now, right? But man, I'm tired of it. So yeah, I'm cheering for Philadelphia. My heart says Philadelphia. My head says Kansas City. We were talking on our morning show this week. We were talking with Aaron Grimes, former Philadelphia Eagle, and he's obviously cheering for the Eagles. And he said the worst case scenario is for the Eagles to have a 1-score lead. Kansas City gets the ball with 5 minutes to go because you know what's going to happen. He's going to march it down the field, and Mahomes will hit Kelsey or hand it off or run it in himself for the touchdown, and the Chiefs will win it. So I don't know. It should be a good game. I'm looking forward to it. I think it all maybe might be all resting on Barkley's shoulders, and if he can have a big game, it might go the Eagles' way. But I'm looking forward to it. Should be a good game. Should be close. Should be entertaining, and go Eagles.
I was talking to John Ryan about this Travis Kelsey. He hasn't been as dominant, but he was still I think he still had like the 4th best yards for tight ends this year or something. He reminds me of Nick Lewis at the end of his career. I like Nick Lewis as a person, and I like Nick Lewis as a football player. But at the end, Nick Lewis was a mall walker, and that's exactly what Kelsey is. He'll go to Reitman's, do a button hook at New York Fries, and he's wide open in the food court. Like he just, you know what I mean? It's like somehow this guy gets open. I don't get it.
Yep. Well, he's good. That's what it is. He's good. He knows he's smart, right? You're right. Yeah. He gets open and he doesn't drop the ball, right? If the ball hits him in the hands, he's going to catch it, and it might be 8 yards for a first down, or it might be 8 yards and then 10 more yak after that, right? So he's still got the capabilities to change a game, even though he hasn't had as good a season as we're used to seeing him have.
So, lastly, hockey question for you. I don't want to get political, but I have it bothers me that athletes get burned because of stupidity and politics and wars and things like that. I.e., no Czechia or no like Russia, like for sure, like in this Four Nations Cup, which it wouldn't be Four Nations if we had Russia there. Because of that, I'm not that pumped for this. How Edmonton must be kind of pumped because your guy's playing in it, right? You got the big boy playing in it.
Yeah, for sure. Everyone's, it's. I'm excited about it because it's a best on best, right? It may not be all the countries. It's a best on best. I don't think I'm going to watch any Finland versus Sweden or Sweden versus USA games unless I've got absolutely nothing else to do. But I'm going to pay attention to the American games and the Canadian games, and I assume they're going to meet in the final. The U.S. has a pretty good team, and that might. I think it'll be a good game when they play in the round robin portion, and I'm assuming they're going to play each other in the final. That'll be a great game too. So I'm kind of interested in it. I just hope it's good hockey and nobody gets hurt.
Yeah, no, that's true. And for sure the Oilers, because I am an Oilers fan, and I'm gonna tell you this right now. At the start of the year, I picked Edmonton, Florida. I know this wouldn't be a reach. It's not some hot take, but I did say Edmonton, Florida rematch in the Stanley Cup. And I sitting here today as we talk early part of February, I think I like my odds. I like what the Oilers are doing. I think they'll add somebody yet. I think they can get Brad Marchand. That's kind of been a rumor.
Yeah, that would be interesting, right? Yeah, I heard that today that it's been going around. They're gonna one guy they're gonna add is Evander Kane, right? At some point,
Yeah.
and that's gonna add some muscle and some physicality to their lineup, which they really need. They get out hit in all their games, but they got the puck all the time, so that's more why they get out hit than anything else. So they're playing so well right now. I mean, they're playing so well right now, and I think they're kind of going to cruise the rest of the way and hit the playoffs and try and win the tough ones again. I mean, everything's going right for them. Everything's like their backup goaltender has won 6 straight starts, 10 of his last 11. Like everything's going well for them right now. Dreisaitl's leading the league in everything, and yeah, they're a really good hockey team right now.
And are you surprised Klingberg's averaging like 18 minutes a game almost here, coming back off of a year absence?
Well, that's their weak spot is their defense, right? So I think if there's minutes to take, that it's on the defense core. And, I think they've been banged up a little bit back there. Ekholm's missed a game with the flu or some illness, so that allowed them to play a lot more. So, yeah, not really surprised. They've had a couple of back-to-backs in there as well, so he'd get more ice time there as well. So I don't know. I don't know if he'll be playing that much later in the season. They're going to add a defenseman at some point, right? Everybody believes. So I'm sure it'll be a guy who will force a guy out of the lineup, and I don't know if Klingberg will be the guy or not, but he'll be a guy that'll take a lot of minutes, whoever they pick up. So
this guy,
trade deadline is going to be interesting this year.
Yeah, it will be. This guy used to be the color voice for the Oilers. He's the play-by-play voice of the Edmonton Elks. Thanks for your time, Morley Scott.
Anytime, Ballsy. Good to talk to you.
All right, that's going to do it for episode 93 of Ballsy and Cut. Short one tonight. Oilers are actually playing tonight against Colorado, and it's 2-2. Stuart Skinner let in a couple of softies, but Draisaitl and Scory Perry, as my kid said. Scory, not Corey Perry, scoring again for Edmonton, the 40-year-old. Finding the back of the net with a little consistency. He's got double-digit goals for the Oilers. So that's not a bad signing for $1.1 million. Colorado coming in again, and they just scored again. So Colorado's up 3-2. Stuart Skinner should be pulled for Jeff Skinner in net. Like, that's just 3 goals on 9 shots. You need better goaltending than that. All right, coming up tomorrow, we're going to have a show. And we're going to talk to Kerry Joseph, the former Rider great, Plaza of Honor inductee, who has just let go as quarterbacks coach with the Chicago Bears. He'll join us from New Orleans, as he's a Louisiana native, down there for a funeral, but also for the Super Bowl. And talk about what a tough season it is for him and kind of headspace he's in right now. And we'll also hear from Andy McNamara in our bourbon and betting segment as we get you some fun prop bets for the big game on Sunday between the Eagles and the Chiefs. I also want to thank a couple more of my sponsors, AGT Foods Canada, along with Gerhardt Studios and Boys Next Door Window Cleaning. We will talk to you tomorrow.